24 teams, 6 groups, a bunch of multi-sided dice, and one truly ridiculous idea for a game. It's the D&D Euros. If you haven't watched the first part of this video, I highly recommend you do. There I go over what this is all about, as well as introduce you to the 24 combatants in detail. But the short version is that for each country participating in this year's Euros, I have created an avatar in D&D. These avatars are then going to be pitted against one another in a winner-takes-all series of bouts following the same group format as the real-life Euros, eventually whittling the combatants down until just one competitor remains, who will henceforth be the inaugural champion of Europe, which is canonically now a continent just to the west of the Sword Coast. So without any further ado, let's kick things off with Group A, who comprise, in order of initiative, Hungary, a centaur rogue, Switzerland, a Kenku druid, Scotland, a Triton barbarian, and Germany, an Aarakocra artificer. All fights during the group stages take place on this same battle map. Combatants are placed in alphabetical order, left to right, top to bottom. As you can see, there's a lot of space on this map, as well as large rock formations which block a lot of early sight lines. This is to encourage creative play from the combatants and not just allow the fighters and barbarians of the world to run riot turn 1, destroying everything with multiple hits per turn. So without further ado, let's kick on. Group A got off to a cagey start, with Hungary and Scotland both unable to effectively attack due to a lack of good range options. Germany and Switzerland contented themselves with setting up for the future, Germany casting Blur and creating an Eldritch Cannon, and Switzerland casting Spike Growth to try and control the board. Hungary was able to deal with this quite easily, however, closing the gap to deal a heavy blow, and for the moment it seemed as though Switzerland was going to be the first casualty of the tournament until a timely use of Healing Word and wild shaping into an ape kept him from death's door. Scotland, meanwhile, finally got into melee range and scored a brutal hit on Germany, who retaliated with Scorching Ray, some really effective counter-punching there. Back in Kenku form, Switzerland, realising he should have been a little bit more aggressive, conjured a massive lightning storm, calling down lightning on Germany and Scotland's heads, almost finishing them off entirely. Scotland, with no way to heal himself, knew that his goose was cooked, but he attacked Germany recklessly, almost killing him too in the process, but it wasn't enough, and on his next turn, Germany fired his Eldritch Cannon at Scotland, leaving him, just like in the real world football tournament, the first casualty of the games. A turn of wound licking and absolutely everybody missing everything followed. Great bonfire failed, steady aim bow shot failed, ice knife failed. Then Germany on death's door cast Thunderwave on Hungary, pushing him back, but he was unable to finish him off, and Hungary almost killed him on the counter. Or he would have if not for a timely use of Shield. But now Germany was utterly out of spell slots, and Switzerland, content to watch this one play out from the sidelines, used his action to transform once again into an ape. Germany, somehow clinging on, attacked Hungary, and to everyone's surprise, Hungary fell. Germany seemed to be the luckiest player ever, and for a moment it looked like he was going to pull off a surprise victory in the group, but it wasn't enough, as 2 turns later, Switzerland transformed back into his Kenku form and threw an ice knife at Germany, who failed the dex save and died an icy death. Switzerland makes it through Group A. Group B consisted of Italy, an Aasimar fighter, Spain, a Minotaur paladin, Albania, a halfling cleric, and Croatia, a fairy warlock. For the melee fighters, it was all about trying to close down the distance as quickly as possible. Spain used Find Steed to summon a warhorse and move straight into melee range turn 1, 2 divine smites later, and Croatia was almost dead without having a chance to do a single thing. Albania and Italy traded blows from afar, while Croatia on death's door casted Armour of Agathis to try and survive a little longer. It wasn't enough, however, and on its next turn, Spain used Magic Weapon, turning his sword into a +1 magical weapon before finishing off Croatia with ease. Albania, meanwhile, hit Italy with both Spiritual Weapon and Spirit Guardians, but Italy's Aasimar race came in clutch, and he was able to tank the radiant damage with relative ease. He closed in on Albania and used his full action surge to rain down hits on her head, killing Albania outright. It was now all down to the 2 martial classes, as Spain commanded his horse to take the dash action in order to close the gap between them, and use his Minotaur racial feature Goring Rush plus his full attack to deal a massive hit on Italy. Even reducing the radiant damage from Divine Smite by half, not much is able to tank 36 damage in one hit, and Italy too falls, leaving Spain the deserving winner of this very fast round. Group C saw Serbia, a human artificer, Slovenia, a half-orc monk, England, a Leonin ranger, and Denmark, a furbolg barbarian. Serbia started off quite cagey, trying to keep Denmark at bay with the use of web to slow him down and false life to bolster his defences. Slovenia, on the other hand, got right in there, burning a key point to use Step of the Wind to run right up to England and deliver heavy damage. England immediately retaliated by using his Leonin racial feature Daunting Roar to frighten Slovenia and deal massive damage in return. On the next turn, Slovenia asked the DM if she could do something unconventional, burn a key point to use her Flurry of Blows action, but instead of using it to attack, she wanted to instead use it to tie a rope around England's waist. Rules as written, of course, this isn't allowed, but since she isn't directly hurting England and it is utilising the spirit of Flurry of Blows, i.e. using a key point to make her hands move really quickly, the DM says that he'll allow it, but he says it will be a contested athletics or acrobatics roll, player choice. Slovenia agrees and then uses her action to cast darkness on the rope in her hands. She then burns the key point and ties the rope around England's waist before dancing away. England fails the contested acrobatics check, and just like that, England is essentially blind. England asks the DM on his turn if he could simply use his action to cut off the rope. The DM says yes, but first he needs to make an insight check to see if he can work out what's actually happened. He fails the check, and the DM says that for now England is clueless as to why he suddenly can't see. The monk simply moved too quickly for him to follow. So instead he blindly shoots with his bow at a random target, and even rolling at disadvantage with half cover, he manages to hit Denmark. Back on the other side of the battle now, and Serbia, realising that Denmark is resistant to all damage types while raging, decides to simply keep him at bay with the help of his steel defender in hopes of allowing the rage to wear off. Back in the cloud of darkness, and England once again fires blind, this time hitting Slovenia. However, despite being in total darkness, Slovenia uses her reaction to deflect missile and then spends a key point to throw the missile straight back at England. And unbelievably, despite it being at disadvantage due to the darkness, she hits England, causing 8 damage. Suffice to say, England is extremely annoyed at this turn of events, and some table drama then follows as he tells the DM that it is completely unfair he's been ruled against in this way. He claims that the DM is biased towards Slovenia. How, he argues, would she be able to deflect missiles in complete darkness? She can't even see the arrow coming. The DM counters this by politely asking England to show him where in the description for deflect missiles it says that you have to actually be able to see a missile being shot at you. England is furious, so the DM decides to be a little kind towards him, giving him advantage on the next insight check to see if he can work out why he's blind, and this time, blessedly, he is able to figure it out. Denmark, meanwhile, unable to get to Serbia, attacks the steel defender instead, destroying it before using a bonus action to turn invisible, which is a feature of the furbolg race. Back with the darkness, and Slovenia peppers England with attacks, dealing him heavy damage, while England retaliates by using one of his 2 actions to cut through the rope tied around himself, finally freeing himself of the darkness. Bonus action Zephyr Strike, and he attacks Serbia, killing him completely. On the next turn, Denmark bonus action turns invisible and uses his action to dash, finally ending up in melee range after 4 rounds. Now that everyone is in melee, the rest of the battle is fairly uneventful, it has to be said. Denmark uses his turns unexpectedly to rage and recklessly attack, Slovenia uses her last key point to disengage and run away, and England finds himself caught between the 2 combatants, eventually succumbing to Denmark after just 1 more round. Denmark chases down Slovenia, finally cornering her at the top of the map, and despite managing to stall out Denmark long enough for his rage to fade, she is unable to deal a killing blow before succumbing to Denmark's counterattack. Even her half-orc racial feature isn't enough to save her, and Denmark stands victorious. Into the semi-finals we go then, and here we see the return of the victors from the first 3 groups. The Minotaur Paladin Spain, who made short work of the second round by dumping all of his spell slots into Divine Smite as soon as he could. The Kenku Druid Switzerland, who put up a surprisingly robust defense by using Wild Shape and Healing Word to shrug off huge amounts of damage. And the Furbolg Barbarian Denmark, who used his ability to turn invisible on demand and be resistant to all damage types to shrug off a lot of damage and inflict heavy wounds in retaliation. 3 very different types of fighter here, but all 3 have proven themselves worthy of being here. Which one will make it to the final, now that only 3 remain? Well, in the end, it turned out to be a pretty short fight. The battlefield for these semi-finals is a little different to the group stages, moving the starting positions closer and moving the rock formations slightly so they still block off the sight lines. Spain starts off with a bang. On a DM judgment call, he did allow Spain to continue to be riding the warhorse which he summoned during the previous combat, considering that the warhorse wasn't actually killed. Knowing that as soon as Denmark rages, he will gain resistance to all types of damage, Spain goes on the offensive. He runs straight at Denmark, dealing him 2 hits, plus Goring Rush, followed by 2 Divine Smites to deal a massive 30 damage to Denmark and almost kill him off round 1. Switzerland too decides not to mess around this time, immediately calling lightning and casting it down on Spain, who fails, and Denmark, who succeeds in his saving throw. Denmark now, and of course there's only one play possible, bonus action Rage followed by 2 reckless attacks. He rolls incredibly high damage rolls of 35, leaving Spain, unbelievably, dead. Switzerland casts another lightning bolt, which Denmark absolutely tanks now that he's raging. Denmark then throws a javelin at Switzerland, followed by a bonus action to turn invisible. Now that the barbarian is invisible, Switzerland can't actually do much. He can't target him after all with a lightning storm, so instead he plays smart, dropping concentration on the lightning storm and casting spike growth instead, centered on the last place that he saw the barbarian before he turned invisible. Denmark's turn, and he realizes with dread that he now has to move. If he stays put, then his rage is going to wear off, and then his next turn he will then be vulnerable to all damage types. However, there is a chance, however small, that he will survive, and if he can just close the distance between himself and Switzerland, Switzerland for sure is going to fall very soon. So he moves forwards, attacking Switzerland, dealing heavy damage, but he takes 8 damage in exchange, which halved becomes 4, aka the exact number of hit points that he had remaining. Denmark falls, and our first finalist is Switzerland, who wins thanks to some incredible use of AoE effects. It seems that AoE and range attacks really are the way to victory in this tournament. That's all for this time. Join me again in a couple of weeks when we're going to take on the other half of the draw and then find out who is going to be the winner of this, the first ever D&D Euros. Until then, if you've enjoyed this somewhat different content, silly as it may be, do consider dropping a like. I wanted to try something a little bit different from the usual YouTube fare, so hey, if you like this type of content, or, if you prefer my more traditional video essays or war reports, do let me know. I'll be happy to oblige in due course. But until then, take care and have a wonderful rest of the week.